You know, I think I'm actually faster than this, right, like here. I thought it was not working actually, to be perfectly honest. It's a hike up there. In this video, we'll be covering a couple of topics, a couple of things that I always come across whenever I go out and take photographs in the outdoors. The first one is going to be how to choose the manual settings over the aperture, or the aperture priority over the manual settings. Now, I'm always considering one or the other, and I have a hack that actually helps me decide, should I go aperture priority or should I go manual settings. The second thing is going to be how to take a wider angle photograph if you only have, let's say, a 24mm lens with you and you want to go much wider. And the third thing is a hack that I do on my tripod to always allow me to have it level without, screwing the legs in and out or adjusting it. And if you guys are wondering where I am at Velika Planina again. This time I came up with the gondola and I walked half of the way, so it's kind of a half-way of hiking. Typically, when you start learning photography, you start in manual settings because you want to learn how the aperture works, how the shutter speed works, how the ISO works, and how they all come together to create this triangle of exposure. But then after a while, when you start taking a lot of photos, you notice that adjusting the shutter speed every time, especially for landscape photography or photography where things aren't moving, becomes kind of a hassle. So then you quickly switch to aperture priority because typically you want your aperture to define what the image is going to look like, and you want to control the ISO to give you the quality of the image that you can have. So typically keep the ISO at the lowest possible point. So I have this one rule. Every time I set my camera on a tripod, I use manual settings. I have this rule: if I shoot handheld, I use aperture priority most of the time. And every time I set my camera on a tripod, I'm using manual settings. And the reason for this is just that I have that control and that feeling, that engagement in the whole photography process. Okay, so in this case, when I'm going to shoot handheld, I'm actually going to switch to aperture priority. I'm going to worry just about my aperture. I want to set it to f11 to get everything in focus in just one shot. Now maybe since the foreground elements are really close, I'll probably have to switch it higher, so to f16. There you go. Now, one thing that you can do if you don't have a wide enough angle lens, you can do a panorama. Basically, I'm going to do a vertical panorama. I'm going to take one photograph of this foreground, focusing on this with f11, and then focusing on the tree with f11, but I'll tilt my camera up a little bit. And then I'm going to stitch everything together into one 3:2 aspect ratio photo, which means that I'm going to have to squeeze in a little bit of this foreground, maybe zoom it in a little bit. Now this will make it seem like this is really standing out from the whole photograph, and it's going to make everything appear a little bit more kind of wide-angly. If you ever find yourself traveling to Slovenia, this is definitely a place you gotta visit. It's on the northern part of our little teeny tiny country, and it's actually very close to where I live. So if you do visit our little lovely Slovenia, then make sure to give me a shout out in the comments or just send me an email. It's especially beautiful in the springtime here because you have these purple flowers, purple bell flowers, I think they're called, I'm not really sure. But everything is basically purple when you come here in spring. And in the winter time, it's cool for snowing, it's cool for hiking, it's cool for running, as you can see, and people are just enjoying themselves here a lot, I think. Now for the tripod hack, this one's actually very easy. Whenever you find yourself on a ground that isn't even, which means that you always have to adjust the legs in order to keep the camera level, well, what I do is I always keep one leg of the three shorter than the other two, which means that I only have to basically find the location like this, and then you have a level camera. Now it's funny, I haven't heard a drone today. Typically I bring my drone here and I fly a little bit. I'm very aware that people are really annoyed by drones, so I try to take like 5 minutes max of drone flying. And I was actually considering bringing my FPV drone today. I didn't fly it for about like half a year. By the way, this is going to be an interesting composition here, and it is pretty much midday. So let's just set up the camera, switch it to manual mode because it's gonna be on a tripod, and So with the selfie session out of the way, I'm actually going to find a cottage and get something to eat. So I think it's that way. Now if it gets really foggy up here, people actually get lost. I mean, I got lost almost once. I backtracked. Luckily it was snow, so that I had like a trail leading back to where I came from. But if it's snow and if it's foggy, everything becomes really white because this is at a 1,500 meters altitude, which means that clouds typically cover this area already, and since we're underneath the mountains, no, it's always going to be cloudy here, so yeah. So these are my 3 tips for you guys whenever you go out on a landscape shoot. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel, because this really helps the channel to grow and it motivates me to do these videos for you guys. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.